Alrighty. Eric Church has released the final album in his trilogy entitled Soul, and it's time to talk about it. I reviewed Heart last week. I might review And, I'm still not sure on that because of how limited it is. But now we have Soul, the final piece to this puzzle, and as I said, it is time to talk about it. Going into this album, I had pretty low expectations. Despite the track list containing Hell of a View, one of my favorite songs from last year, I wasn't able to get behind other pre-releases like Bad Mother Trucker or Break It Kinda Guy. Both were tracks that I felt were pretty stupid, and in the case of Break It Kinda Guy, honestly, it just got a bit annoying. Mix that with Lynyrd Skynyrd Jones and Hell of a View, and it would have been logical to assume this album was going to be a hell of a mess. But as I do with every album, I went in open-minded, and I think that's the key to discovering the value in this project. Soul is just so adventurous to the point where on the surface it may feel a little stupid, which it definitely is at times, but if you can escape the mindset of I'm about to listen to a mainstream country record, it's honestly really enjoyable. That's not to say there aren't dud moments or tracks, but man, this album plays it so risky that when Eric gets it right, it's astounding. In my Heart review last week, I talked about how Eric really went for it on that record, and how it created some moments of excellence, but also moments of awkwardness. And the same can be said for Soul, but on a much larger scale. Genre is nothing more than a term or label on this record. It's more rock with some country influence, a lot of soul, as well as some singer-songwriter mixed in. Safety mode wasn't turned off, but mechanically removed from the vehicle. Really, Soul is just Heart on steroids. Take, for example, the arrangement, but specifically the intro of the second track, Look Good and You Know It. Eric comes out with guns blazing to open this thing, just wailing with this bold, emphatic style. And there's also an opera-like vocal arrangement supporting him in the background. I can't even think of a comparison off the top of my head. It's so dramatic. It's so out there, only someone like Eric would even consider it, let alone go through with it. But this dramatic emphasis works perfectly. It wakes you up from the first track, which, though I thoroughly enjoyed, was pretty reserved and low-key. Then just as quick as this wild intro begins, it ends, and we transition quickly into this soft rock soul song with a fat groove. And that constant change of weight, flavor, and just overall style is something that I think helps round the edges on this project, so that despite it being wild and just mind-blowingly risky, it never feels out of control. This album is never in one place for too long, it's just constantly on the move, yet through all the changes in just about every musical aspect, it always somehow feels tied together. It's very messy, but never too messy. Soul is a rare case of experimentation that often shouldn't work, but it just does. I think one of the reasons it still works is because the record still feels Eric. The experimentation is still tasteful, it's creative and fresh. Eric has never been a guy to play it safe. Just look at The Outsiders, an album I thought was a little overhated. Eric has always been heavily rock influenced. So when he ventures out into more opera, soul-twisted rock, no matter how far down that road he goes, it still feels rooted in Eric's lane of artistry. Furthermore, instrumentally, the palette isn't offering anything super new. It's the same electric guitars, garage-style drums, deep strings, and warm acoustics Eric likes, but they're just put to use in such different ways, which is what creates this illusion of something new. Technically, it is new, but it's rooted in the same fundamentals Eric has been using forever, further contributing to why this album feels so adventurous while still remaining in Eric's beloved realm of musicianship. Another production highlight I want to mention is Bright Side Girl, which is also in the running as my favorite track. One of the main characteristics of this track that keeps me hooked is the chord progression. It's one of the most beautiful chord progressions I've heard in a while. I'm going to try and figure out exactly what it is, but it ends on a very wide open chord. Rather than a defining chord to close the progression, it ends in some sort of open chord that just transitions nicely into the next bar. It almost feels otherworldly. Pair that with incredibly warm, soft acoustics and bellowing string sections, and that heavenly mood is only exaggerated further. Really, the whole track with the builds and vocal arrangements is nothing short of an experience. It's funny because I got into this groove with these new tracks, and I grew so accustomed to the weirdness that by the time we got to pre-releases, Break It Kinda Guy almost felt more in place than Hell of a View. Hell of a View is just so tight and classic Eric that it doesn't stand out in a bad way, but it stands out like lasagna in a Chinese store. Both are great, but one of these things clearly doesn't belong.
One One of these things is not like the others.
Now, of course, as I said, this album isn't all smooth sailing. Similar to Heart, I think this album starts faltering as we get deeper into it. Honestly, I just think as we go on, the arrangements become too normal and they end up feeling boring. Like on Bad Mother Trucker, where though production and sound-wise is by no means a dud, but especially given its location on the back half of the record, it almost feels like we're past the best moments. I understand not every track can be the musical circus that was Look Good and You Know It, but when all the other tracks have super intricate and rapid changing arrangements, it just feels slow when the closing few don't follow suit. And now to the main issue I had leaving this record, the songwriting. It's rare Eric leaves anything lyrically to be desired, but I just felt like this album was arguably the least inspired record Eric has put out. I think that was bound to happen given the fact they went into a mountain for 3 weeks with one song and made 25, but especially listening to Break It Kinda Guy, it almost feels like they made a cool instrumental, but then just didn't give the lyrics the same love. This album feels more like a mixtape in the sense that it's more of just Eric dipping his toes into different sounds, pushing the boundaries, testing his vocal limits rather than a cohesive, well-rounded album. Especially songwriting-wise, it often feels like these tracks were demos that were given random lyrics for the sole purpose of establishing a melody. For example, despite the fact Break It Kinda Guy really grew on me sonically, just reading these lyrics, they just feel pointless and hollow. Simply put, there's nothing to them. It's hard to think much thought went into lines like these. 'Cause I tell my eagle where to fly. If it's not broke, I'm a break it kinda guy. Don't tell me where to put it. I put it where I want. Don't tell me how to do it, and don't tell me how to don't. Don't tell me how to don't? Even on tracks I love like Look Good and You Know It, it's evident this isn't the most clever pen Eric has ever put to paper. I'm not expecting every song to be a masterpiece, but reading the lyrics on Bad Mother Trucker and Break It Kinda Guy and a few others, it's just a dip in lyrical quality we haven't really seen from Eric in a while. It's worth mentioning there are still instances of great songwriting, like on The Closer, which I love, Lynyrd Skynyrd Jones, a really touching story about a biracial son whose dad left when he was young. As a result, the boy struggles with his identity, and he really wants to know where he came from, and then it all comes full circle when the boy and his father meet each other at the mother's funeral. It really is a great story, and embodies the storytelling that makes country music special. Now don't get me wrong, there is charm in simplicity. I know I just used it as an example the other way, but I don't have an issue with the lack of intricacies found in Look Good and You Know It. I just don't think there's enough really well-written songs to justify the ones on the lower end of the spectrum. So overall, Soul was a pleasant surprise. It really took me by surprise how much I enjoyed it, although I must say this definitely felt like a bit more of a mixtape than an album. Eric really dipped his toes into just about everything, and the album didn't really have much of a running narrative. At least I didn't catch on to one after my however many listens through. I don't want the lack of cohesion or shallower songwriting to be blatantly ignored, because it is present, it is a bit of a problem, but I also don't want that to distract from some of the most fresh, progressive production and arrangements I have heard in a while in the genre of country music. Heart and Soul is what pushing the boundaries of country music in the best ways looks like. Are there duds or attempts that just didn't work? Sure, but you're never going to create something special by playing it safe. If nobody moves forward and takes risks, nothing advances. And though I definitely don't want Break It Kinda Guy to be the next trending style in country, I think we should applaud the creativity and willingness to try that Eric put forth over the course of these records. Rating-wise, I think I'm going to give this one a very strong 7. Think like a 7.8. It's nearly an 8, but I'm going to hold it to a 7 due to things like the songwriting, lack of cohesion, but it definitely also gets bonus points for being so original and still putting forth great music amongst the creativity. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Be sure to comment what you thought of this album in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed. If you're new, maybe consider subscribing for more country music content. Links to both my Instagram and Discord are in the description below. And yeah, until next time, have a great day.